Being nice should work, right? You're kind, you care, you give, so people should appreciate you, respect you, maybe even value you more. But that's not always what happens. Sometimes the nicer you are, the less people seem to care. Strange, right? Hello, and welcome back to Bookworm. Today we're diving into Why Men Love Bitches, a book with a title that sounds controversial, but the idea behind it is very simple. Being too nice can actually work against you, not because kindness is bad, but because what people perceive matters. When you're always available, always giving, always trying to please, you don't look kind. You look easy to ignore, and that changes everything. Stay with me as we dive deeper. Because once you understand this, you'll start seeing your behavior differently. And if you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into Sherry Argo's best-selling book, Why Men Love Bitches. Now, that title is designed to get your attention. And you know what? It works. But if you look past that provocative name, you'll find a really fascinating look at relationship dynamics, self-respect, and all the little things that can make or break attraction. So let's get right into it. So the book kicks off with a puzzle that a lot of us have probably faced. You're the perfect partner, right? You're kind, you're giving, you're always accommodating, you cancel your plans for a last-minute date, you give it your all, but somehow, instead of being appreciated, you just feel taken for granted. It's this super frustrating cycle, and the book's whole point is that this isn't just bad luck, it's actually a pretty predictable outcome when one person starts giving way too much.
To really get what this is all about, we have to talk about the title. Sherry Argov, the author, isn't telling people to be cruel or mean, not at all. She actually flips the word bitch on its head and gives it a whole new meaning. A woman who is kind, yes, but also incredibly strong. Let's take a look at how she defines it.
Okay, so here it is, the core definition from the book. This is not about being aggressive. Argov calls this woman a steel magnolia. Beautiful and flowery on the outside, but total steel on the inside. She's feminine, she's kind, but deep down she has this unbreakable core of self-respect. She knows what she wants, and maybe more importantly, she is not going to sacrifice who she is just to get it. This is the kind of woman who can be sweet and warm, but has absolutely no problem saying, you know what, that doesn't work for me, and meaning it with no apology.
So to really hammer this point home, Argov puts this dream girl right next to the nice girl. And the nice girl is the one who's always overcompensating, just giving and giving and giving, really hoping that someday it'll all be returned. She'll agree to watch his favorite action movie for the third time, even though she can't stand it, just to be agreeable. The book argues that her real motivation is fear of losing the relationship. And that fear leads her to totally devalue her own needs, and in the end, herself. She starts to believe her worth is tied to how much she's willing to sacrifice.
And this leads us to one of the book's main attraction principles. And honestly, this applies to pretty much everything in life, right? The more you desperately chase something, whether it's a job, a goal, or a person, the more it seems to slip through your fingers. And in relationships, this gets turned up to 11. When a man pulls away, it isn't always because he's a bad guy. It's often because that chasing behavior, well, it screams a lack of self-worth. And that can be a huge turnoff for attraction. It just throws the whole balance off.
So why does seeking approval all the time tend to backfire so badly? It's not like men want someone who's mean. The book makes a really important distinction. There's a huge difference between what builds attraction and what destroys it. Real attraction, that's built on respect, a little bit of mystery, but constantly needing approval, that just communicates neediness, which is pretty much the opposite of attractive. In all her interviews with men, Argov said this one phrase kept popping up: mental challenge. And they didn't mean they wanted a woman who could debate politics or science with them. Mental challenge was actually their code for a woman who didn't seem needy. Someone who had her own life, her own thoughts, and wasn't just trying to become whatever she thought he wanted. She has her own passions. She isn't some blank canvas just waiting for him to come along and paint on it. She's a finished work of art that he gets to explore. And this, right here, gets to the absolute heart of that mental challenge. It isn't about playing games. It's about fear. See, the nice girl is running on fear of being alone, fear that he won't approve. But the dream girl, she's running on self-confidence. Her actions show him that her world is not going to fall apart if he leaves. And here's the paradox. That's what makes him afraid of losing her. Her lack of fear is what makes her so magnetic.
Okay, so let's make this a little more real.
The book is packed with these side-by-side comparisons that show how the doormat and the dream girl handle the exact same situations. We'll start with a total classic, availability.
Okay, here's a perfect example from the book. He calls at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday and asks, "Hey, want to come over?" The nice girl, she drops everything she's doing, jumps in the car, and like the book jokes, she might as well have a flashing "We Deliver" sign on her roof. But the dream girl, she might say something like, "Oh, thanks for thinking of me, but I'm busy tonight. How about Thursday?" See? She's not being rude, she's just showing that her time is valuable. She doesn't let him think he has 24/7 access to her, which makes the time he does get with her feel way more special.
And in the end, it really all boils down to priorities. When the nice girl feels disrespected, she might just swallow her feelings to avoid a fight. But the dream girl, she has a completely different set of rules. For her, dignity and self-respect are totally non-negotiable. She gets that any relationship that costs you your dignity isn't a prize worth having. And that's the big switch. She values herself more than she values the relationship, which, funny enough, is what makes the relationship so much healthier and more respectful.
This table really just lays it all out, this idea of being in charge of yourself. The nice girl might dismiss her own values, like maybe she stops going to that yoga class she loves because he thinks it's boring. The dream girl? She values her own priorities. She's the boss of herself. But I think the most powerful line is that last one. The nice girl gives everything up front and then hopes to get something back later. The dream girl works on reciprocity, creating a balanced partnership from the very beginning. She doesn't treat giving like a down payment for future love.
So underneath all of these behaviors is this really powerful psychological idea that the book comes back to again and again. It's something we all know, the thrill of the chase. And this isn't just about the first few dates, it's the dynamic that actually keeps a relationship exciting for the long run. I mean, think about it. A limited edition pair of sneakers, a sold-out concert ticket, that promotion you had to work your butt off for. The fact that they're scarce or required a lot of effort makes them seem so much more valuable. Argo says the same thing applies to relationships. As she puts it, no one respects a freebie. When a woman is just too available, too agreeable, she accidentally lowers her own perceived value because there's no challenge, no effort required. It taps into this thing called cognitive dissonance. Basically, our brains justify our efforts by telling us the goal must be really, really valuable.
So here's how that whole process plays out. It all starts with that basic human instinct to want what's just a little bit out of reach. When a woman seems independent and she's not falling all over him, it suddenly becomes a challenge. He starts thinking about her more, trying to figure out how to win her over. And that, according to the book, is what grabs and holds his interest. Because he actually has to put in some effort, he becomes way more invested in the whole thing.
This is how you keep that chase going long-term. The dream girl never lets him feel like he's got her 100% figured out. There's always a little piece of her that's just for her hobbies, her friends, her own private thoughts. Because he never feels like he has her completely under his thumb, the pursuit never really ends. It's kind of like intermittent reinforcement, you know? If reward is predictable, it gets boring. But if it's unpredictable, the desire for it just skyrockets. By not being totally predictable, she keeps that spark alive.
Now, a really common question here is, okay, so does this mean I have to stop being a kind person? And the book's answer is a huge, loud, resounding no. This is not about giving up kindness. It's about figuring out the difference between kindness that comes from a place of strength and just being agreeable because you're scared. One is a choice, the other is a compulsion.
This quote points out a huge perception gap. The yes woman, she thinks she's being kind and supportive, but the message she's accidentally sending is that his needs are way more important than hers. And the men Argo interviewed, they didn't see this as kindness. They saw it as a lack of self-belief. And you know, it's really hard to respect someone who doesn't seem to respect themselves. This is where boundaries are so important. Real kindness and strong boundaries can absolutely exist together.
And this is really the bottom line on this whole topic. Setting up boundaries and sticking to them isn't aggressive. It's an act of self-respect. When you say no to something that doesn't feel right, you're not being mean. You are simply teaching other people how to treat you. You're showing them your own value, and that's something everyone responds to. Boundaries are like the silent architects of respect in any relationship.
So, to wrap it all up, here are the big takeaways. Self-respect is way more attractive than neediness. Keeping your independence creates that magnetic mental challenge. Boundaries aren't walls. They're more like an instruction manual for how you expect to be treated. And remember, true kindness comes from a place of strength, while being too nice usually comes from a place of fear. But the foundation for all of this, knowing that you are a whole, complete person with or without a partner. And that really brings us to our final thought.
According to this whole framework, the entire dynamic of a relationship, the power, the respect, the attraction, it all comes down to the answer to this one question. The person who needs the relationship gives away all their power, but the person who chooses the relationship every single day from a place of being whole and complete on their own, well, that's the person who gets to keep it.
If there's one idea to take from this book, it's this. Respect doesn't come from giving more, it comes from valuing yourself more. Why Men Love Bitches shows that when you constantly try to please others, you slowly lose your position. Not because people are bad, but because human psychology works that way. People value what feels rare, what feels independent, what doesn't chase. And when you're always available, you remove that value. But here's the important part. This isn't about becoming cold or playing games. It's about balance. Giving without losing yourself, setting boundaries, saying no when needed, and not needing approval all the time. That's where real confidence comes from. If this made you think differently, like the video, subscribe to Bookworm, and stay aware. Because sometimes being too nice is the real problem.